All right, so who are we? I'm Sondra Oroszco. I'm a senior product manager at Looker, and I work with the administration team. So the administration team is a team of engineers, myself as a product manager and a designer, and we are focused on building out features for you guys. So we're focused on the Looker administrator and making sure that you guys have all the features that you need to configure Looker, to make sure it's running smoothly on a daily basis, and kind of keep the lights on.
And I'm Rachel Johnson. I am a technical support engineer over on our DCL team, the Department of Customer Love. A lot of you are probably pretty familiar with us. We're the faces on the other side of the chat window. And I am one of our authentication subject matter experts. And just to give a quick overview of what we're going to go over today, we will start with the home base of every Looker administrator, the admin console, go over a couple fun features, move into various authentication methods, and finally end with iLooker going over some monitoring and other reports. All right, so the Looker admin console, I'm sure all of you are super familiar with it. It's the home base of every Looker administrator and provides any and all configuration options that you might need. There's over 20 different pages that can be used to set up various configurations, customizations, or other settings. And this helps you keep in touch with making sure your Looker instance is exactly how you need it to be. In this talk, like Sondra mentioned, we're really just scratching the surface. There's tons and tons of information there. So be sure to click around afterward, explore, and you can ask us or any of the DCL members in the back of the hall any questions that might come up. So our first tip is an important one. To make sure that you're providing a technical contact, this is found on the general settings page right there for you. And the technical contact is super important since it's basically our Looker's mainline into your company and your instance. This means that any of the emails in the technical contact area are people that will be receiving release notes, including exciting news about upcoming features or any critical things that might happen, and just making sure that you can receive any email that pertains to your Looker instance. One quick tip is to include a group email or alias within that list. This is especially helpful if any admin is to leave your organization. There still is someone receiving these communications from Looker, and so you're not completely cut off. The other fun tip in the general settings page is adding a custom color palette. Looker comes with a couple of different pre-built color palettes that can be used, and they're great, but they might not be your branding. If you want your reports to stand out, to match your other marketing materials, and just maybe your company colors are very seriously your favorite colors and you need them everywhere, this is the way to do it. As you can see here, over on one side, we have the blue, green, gray color theme. This is the Looker default color palette. It's great, but if I was, say, a breast cancer awareness organization, it's not really my branding. So instead, I create this pink-themed color palette, and now all of my dashboards are matching exactly with the Think Pink idea that a breast cancer organization would want to have. And for authentication, as we all know, data security is super, super important. We don't need any users accessing data that we don't really want them seeing. So that leads us to authentication and making sure that everything's secure and exactly the way we want it to be. In terms of security, the first and simplest way to make sure that no users are hacking into your system or anything like that is to enforce secure and strict password requirements. The requirements in Looker can be customized, which means if your security team has really strict and specific ideas of what they want a password to look like, you can make sure that your Looker passwords also match those requirements. This means special characters, maybe numbers, or the specific number of characters that need to be included in a password length are all customizable and can match your organization. The other portion of data security includes two-factor authentication. This means that a user is not only entering just their password to gain access to the instance, they are also having to provide a one-time code that is generated when they attempt to log in, and this gives another factor of making sure that we know the user truly is who they say they are before they gain access to the instance. Data security, thumbs up all around there. Another option when it comes to authentication is using an external authentication method. Currently, Looker supports 4 different methods, including Google OAuth, SAML, LDAP, and OpenID Connect. Any of these 4 can be configured from the admin panel, and if you ever are attempting to configure one and you're not seeing the setup page there, do reach out to your account team. There might be a little bit of setup that needs to happen on our end first, so nothing's wrong, just a quick extra step. And when you're using an external authentication method, our biggest trick is to make sure that you're using the test buttons that are available throughout the configuration pages. These test buttons are especially important to make sure that your configuration is working correctly and as expected, since a lockout is something we definitely want to prevent. Ignoring it is another option too, but maybe not the most ideal. The test buttons are available on the configuration pages of all 4 of those different authentication systems, so they're totally available and quick and easy to use. A quick note about them is that the success message that appears at the top, as we can see here, is only looking for if the authentication itself is working correctly. This is a great thing and a first step when you see the success message. Awesome, my configuration looks like it's working perfectly. I can totally go and enable it now. Woohoo, I did it? Not quite. There's one other thing we want to make sure we check, and that's the user info box. This is especially important if you're using group to role mapping. In this case, you can see the groups and roles in this user info are blank. If I was expecting my role to be assigned through this authentication, this would be an upsetting piece of information and would give me a hint that I need to go check my configuration settings and be sure that my SAML groups are called what I'm expecting them to be called, I didn't have a typo anywhere, and that when a user logs in, they will be assigned the role that I'm expecting them to be assigned.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and now we're going to talk about monitoring. So you can use a tool in Looker called iLooker to monitor what's going on in your instance. And we will chat about that now. So as admins, hopefully most of you are familiar with the usage dashboard. The usage dashboard, which we're showing you here, can be found in the admin section if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that left-hand nav. And you can see, maybe you can't see from the back, but there's a tab there called usage, the very last one on the list. And if you click into that, you'll get this dashboard. And this dashboard is giving you some high-level insights about what's going on in your Looker instance. So this dashboard contains about 8 or 10 tiles. You can't see them all here, but I'll walk you through what's on this dashboard. At the top, you have a tile for queries by source. So this is the top one that you see here. And this tile is going to show you where your users are executing different queries. And so you can see the pink here on the stack chart is dashboard queries. The teal is explore queries. So I can immediately see that my users are getting their data more often from dashboards than explores. Depending on your goals, that might be something you want to adjust. And it's just kind of a good thing to know where in the application your users are spending most of their time. Below that, you have 2 tiles that give you some info about users. The first is showing you active users per day. And in iLooker and in the usage dashboard, when we talk about active users, we're talking about users who are querying. So users who are running a query, we call those active. So this first tile on my right is showing you active users per day, so you can see how many people are using Looker on a daily basis. Next to that, we have a tile for top users, which is a little cut off, and I've blurred out the names because we're admins here and we care about security and privacy of our users. But if you could see the names on this tile, you would see a list of the folks who are users in my instance who are querying the most. And that's an important thing to know because you can align with those users and get them to help evangelize and spread the use of data in your organization. Below those tiles, there's some information about query runtime, so you can get some performance stats, some info about scheduled plans showing you performance and status of those schedules. Below that is a tile for public looks. And a tip we want to throw out for that one, this is a tile that you should keep an eye on. If you're an administrator and you've opened up access for your users to make certain looks public, you should keep an eye on that tile in this dashboard because you really should only be exposing data that is truly public. Make sure that no sensitive data is being shared by your users. And then finally, at the very bottom of this dashboard, you'll find tiles for the top looks, the top dashboards, and the commonly used fields, which will give you some insights into what's the most popular stuff that your users are using. So this is a great high-level view. And the usage dashboard is going to give you a bunch of info. But it also serves as a launching point that's going to get you into the iLooker Explorers. So iLooker is a model that's built into your Looker instance, built for you by us at Looker. It's not one that you can find or see on your own. It's a little bit hidden. But this iLooker model connects directly to the internal application database in Looker. So it's letting you peek under the hood and see what's going on in your instance across several different dimensions. And so to get to those iLooker Explorers, because they're a bit hidden in the product today, you can use the usage dashboard and click into any of the tile titles or open that drop-down menu and click Explore from here. So you might be wondering if these are hidden, why should you dig into these iLooker Explorers? What good stuff is there? Well, for one, the iLooker Explorers are what's powering this entire dashboard. So everything that you find in the dashboard, you can drill even deeper by going to the Explorers. And there's 4 important use cases that we're going to walk through in a second here that are really great things that you can do with iLooker. So the first one that we're going to walk through is using iLooker, you can see what's most popular in your instance. The second use case that's really handy is using iLooker to monitor issues, problems that your users are running into so that you can start to troubleshoot those. The third use case is getting alerts on things that are changing or events that are happening within your instance. And then finally, the fourth use case we'll talk about is knowing who's active and who's not as active in your instance. So we're going to dig into that first use case now. And imagine that I actually clicked on that Explore from Here button in this dashboard. That's going to take me to one of the iLooker Explorers called History. So the History Explorer, you can navigate to it the way I just described, but you can also go directly to the URL. So you might want to jot this one down. The URL for this is going to be your host. You fill that in with whatever your organization's host name is, .looker.com/explore, just like any other explorer, /iLooker with a double underscore, there's 2 underscores there, /history. And so this Explorer is based on the history table in the internal database of Looker. And the history table stores query history. So every query that your users have run in the last 90 days has a record in this table. And keep in mind, it does get truncated after 90 days. So in this Explorer, we've joined in a bunch of other tables to give that query history some context. So we've joined in a table for dashboards, for looks. We've joined in some user information so that you can start to get some interesting insights out of this Explore. And some of the top use cases for this Explore are seeing what dashboards, what looks, and what explores are most popular in your instance. And these are important things to know because that tells you what content and what parts of your model your users are most engaged with. It can also start to surface problems. For example, if you or your team has spent a bunch of time building out a really complicated dashboard or a model, and you go to this Query Explorer, History Explorer, and find out that nobody's using that stuff, that might be an opportunity for you to adjust your model or adjust your content or reach out to your users and provide some training to get them more engaged with that content. So we'll walk through a couple of quick examples using the History Explorer. So I apologize that it's a little bit small. I realize you guys probably can't read this, so I'll just walk you through it. So what I've done here, I'm in the History Explorer, and I've pulled in some information about dashboards. So I pulled in a dashboard title, and I've also pulled in a measure called query run count. And the query run count is telling me how many queries were run against each of these dashboards. And I've applied a filter here for the last 7 days. So this is going to show me which dashboards have been the most popular in the last 7 days. Another good use case is seeing what's the most popular looks in your instance. So here I've swapped out the dashboard title and pulled in a look title instead. And I'm also pulling in some interesting metadata about looks. So I've pulled in a created date for the looks. And I've also pulled in this third column here, which is called a look link. And so within the iLooker model, you'll find some fields that are built to be links that will take you to other parts of the Looker application. In this case, this link is going to take me directly to that look. So if I'm looking at data about that look and I want to figure out exactly what it is, I don't have to search for it. I can click right through from that dimension. I'm pulling in an additional measure as well. So I still have my query run count. And the second measure that I'm pulling in is called average runtime. So the average runtime field is going to tell me how long queries are typically taking. And this is a really interesting measure to juxtapose against your query run count, because then you can see of the most popular data or of the most popular content that your users are looking at, how many of them are performant. And if you find that your most popular look has the longest average runtime, that's an opportunity to go and make sure that that content that your users want is going to run quickly. And then finally, I'm taking a look at the most popular explores in my instance. And so here I've pulled in from the query table a dimension called explore, which is giving me the name of the explorer that users are querying. And here again, I'm still using the query run count to sort through and show me the most popular explorers. But I pulled in a second measure, which is a user count. And so again, another interesting one to compare to the average, or sorry, to the query run count to see how many of your users are actually running those queries. And in this example, you can't see it, but the second row here, the second most popular explorer is called events. And it has the second highest query run count, but only 5 users using it. So this is probably an area where I want to dig in. I can click on that 5 in the user count column and see who those users are, and probably want to reach out to them and find out what are they doing that they're querying this Explorer so much. All right, so that's the first use case, looking at what's the most popular stuff in your instance. The second use case that we want to talk about is monitoring problems. So looking for areas where your users might be running into queries that are erroring out or schedules that are failing. So in this example, I'm still using the History Explorer, and I've pulled in a new field that I'm using as a filter. And this field is called status. So this is the status from the history table. So it's the status of the query. And I'm filtering for statuses that are equal to errored or killed. And I've pulled in a new dimension as well called history source. And the history source field is going to show you from where in the Looker instance your users executed that query. So in this list here, the sources are SQL Runner, Explore, the API, dashboards, just to give you a feel for what might come up. So in this case, I can see that on Explores, in the last day, because I filtered for 1 day, 2 of my users have run into errors or queries that have errored, and 2 of them have killed queries. So I might want to drill in there. So I'm going to drill into the errors, and I've blurred out the names, but I can see exactly which user ran into this problem. I see that it looks like he ran the same query twice and got errors both times. I can see which Explorer he was trying to hit, which model. And if I click into that, it's very hard to see, but there is a little drop-down menu button, which is circled here. And if I click in there, I'll get a link that will take me to this query, this errored query, on the query details panel, which is another page in the admin section. And from there, I'll be able to see the exact error message that my user encountered, and I can start to drill in and figure out what's going on and where I can make improvements to make sure no one else runs into the same errors. Another good one to monitor is schedules. So this is a new or a different iLooker Explorer. This one is called Scheduled Plan. And so that's the URL in case you wanted to jot it down. And the Scheduled Plan Explorer is going to show you information about schedules that you have created or your users have created. And it's going to give you some interesting details like job counts and destination and formats. So from here, I'm going to query to see how many schedules have failed in the last 24 hours. And so I've pulled in the name of the schedule and the number of times that that schedule has run, and filtered on a status field specifically looking for failures. And so I can see that in the last 24 hours, 6 schedules have failed in my instance, and I can start to drill in here and start to figure out what's going on and where I can make improvements. And I should point out too, there is a page in the admin section called Scheduler History, which contains a lot of the same information. But that page is showing you the most current schedules that have run that have either resulted in a success or a failure. What's great about having access to this Explorer is that in addition to having that running list in that admin page, from this Explorer you can start to dig into more historical data and start looking for patterns and see where there might be failures that you can avert or prevent. All right, so this brings us to our third use case. So we've talked about using iLooker to look for the most popular stuff and to look for problems that your users might be encountering. You can now save, or I shouldn't say now, you've always been able to, save and schedule important reports in iLooker, just like you can with any other data that exists in Looker. So from any of these iLooker Explorers, I can click into the gear menu, and I can save these things as looks. I can save them as a dashboard. You can build your own monitoring dashboard off of iLooker. That would be pretty cool. Customize it for your needs. And I can also schedule this content. So here we've gone back to that previous example that I gave where we were in the History Explorer and we're looking for queries that have errored or been killed. This might be a report that I want to get to my inbox on a daily basis so that I can stay on top of the problems that my users are encountering. So I can do that just by using Looker's normal schedule functionality. Another thing you might want to schedule are events. So things that happen or change in your Looker instance. And so this brings us to a third iLooker Explorer that we're going to describe for you today. This Explorer is called Event Attribute. And the Event Attribute Explorer is giving you information about events that are happening in your Looker instance. And this one does get truncated as well, so it's going to hold up to 100,000 rows of event data. So this is good for scheduling if you just want to see kind of the most recent things that have happened and get alerts based on those things. You can use this Explorer. So in this example here, I want to know as an administrator when changes are being made to the users in my instance. So I have filtered on 3 events. I'm looking for events that are creating a user, deleting a user, or updating a user. And I'm filtering on the last day, and I can see here that in the last day, 5 new users have been created. I can explore a little further from here and see who those users are that were created and which user created them. So this might be something that, again, I want to schedule to myself. Some of these events that exist in the event attribute table, you might want to schedule out to your security team, for example. Using the scheduler functionality, you can send any reports to another team or another department in your organization. We do want to point out that if you are sending things over email, you should not put in PII. So you can get email addresses out of the user joins in many of these explorers. So focusing on names or ideally user IDs is going to be your best bet if you're sending data across to other departments. All right. And so finally, we're on our 4th use case. And so this is one of my favorites. You can use iLooker to see who's active in your instance. And so the example that I have up here is going back to that history explorer. And this is a really good place to look for those active users because it is querying all of the querying the query history. So in this example here, I've pulled a simple list with usernames, which I've blurred out again. And I pulled in 2 measures for approximate web usage in minutes, which is a field that we're calculating for you. And again, the query run count. And so from this view, I can see who my most active users are, how much time they're spending in the application. And an interesting thing that you can do here, you can also sort this in the opposite way and see who some of your least engaged users are. And a great customer story that I have, I recently talked to a customer who was using iLooker to find unengaged users in her company. And she was responsible for training on the data team. So she was responsible for training the rest of the company in their data. And she was using this Explorer to find users who were not engaged, who were not querying Looker. And she would then go and physically sit near them in the office. She would find where their desk was and she would go and sit near them. And what she found was that being physically present, people were more open to asking her questions about the data that they were probably stumbling with on their own and were just too shy to ask. So that's one of my favorite examples of kind of the things that you can do, the optimizations that you can make and get creative with using the data in iLooker. And then finally, this is again that same Explorer. And here I've pulled out the user names and pulled in a week dimension. And now I'm looking at user counts trending over weeks. And so this looks like I've got between 50 and 60 users actively querying on a weekly basis. It's pretty good, depending on how many users are actually in the instance. And so this is another very handy metric to have and to keep an eye on. And just to give you another customer story, I talked to a customer who is the head of his data team, and his team looks at this metric in iLooker. They call it the weekly active Looker metric. And they look at it every week and they use it to optimize what they're doing as a team, what content they're building out, how they're training their users. And they're really optimizing to increase the number of users in their company who are using data to do their jobs and doing that through Looker. So handy thing to have, to save, and keep an eye on. Alrighty. So that concludes the talk on iLooker. But before you go, I want to give you a sneak peek. You probably noticed by my showing you URLs and talking about how some of these iLooker explorers are a little bit hidden in the product, you're probably wondering, what are we doing to improve that, to make that better? And I'm happy to announce that we are working on improvements to iLooker and the usage dashboard. And so coming very soon, and you'll hear more about this in the keynote tomorrow, coming very soon are some admin tools that we're building to make it easier for you to do all of this querying. So pre-building it for you. So we're improving the iLooker model. We're actually overhauling it and creating a new model called System Activity. And with that rollout, we're also giving you 3 pre-built dashboards to replace that usage dashboard. So here you can see the first of those dashboards is called User Activity. I'll walk you through the other 3 in a second. But the goals of this project are, 1, to make the data in this model more understandable, starting with a name change. So iLooker has been confusing for several folks. It doesn't really tell you what the feature is, what it does. We've renamed the model System Activity. And so that hopefully kind of demystifies it a bit. And when you talk about it in your organization, other people can jump on and use it as well with more understanding. We're also working on better documentation. So before this feature gets out of beta, we have a goal to add definitions to every field in the explorers. Right now, many of the fields are undefined, and that can be a little bit of a confusing experience to try to build a query when you don't really know exactly what those fields mean. So better documentation is coming soon. We're also working on improving the user experience. So for one thing, we're giving you pre-built dashboards. So hopefully you don't have to build as much data, but you can continue to drill in, and we want to give you all the flexibility that you need. So all of the explorers in this new system activity model are going to be accessible from the Explore dropdown for admins and folks with a special permission to see that stuff. So as admins, you can also choose which admins in your organization you want to open this stuff up to and give them a special permission called See System Activity, which exists today. And you can give them access to iLooker as soon as you go home, if that's relevant. And then finally, we're also building out more content and some new explorers. So throughout the year, the coming year, you'll see us continuing to improve in this area, even after we launch it, which will be before the end of the year. So this is the first dashboard, the user activity dashboard. This one is a content activity dashboard, giving you some information about content in your system, stuff that's popular, stuff that's unused. And then finally, a big dashboard for performance audits. So this one is going to give you a lot of high-level information about how things are running in your system so you can make sure that everything is running smoothly. And you'll see more of all of these tomorrow morning.